Uh, Thank you all for joining us. We have some of our members of the Adrenal Cure Collective on with us today. And this is a follow-up from our patient panel that took place during ACC Warrior Weekend. So we didn't have time to go through all the questions from the audience. So we were able to get some of our panelists on today to answer those questions. So we'll let Melinda take it away with asking the questions, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. So let's go ahead and start with introduction. So if you could just state your name, where you live, the stage that you were diagnosed at, and your current stage. So let's go ahead and start with Gracie.
Yeah, I'm Gracie Gardino. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and I was diagnosed at stage 4, and I am currently still at stage 4.
Thank you, Gracie. How about Evelyn?
Hello, my name is Evelyn Molina. I was diagnosed in 2022. I was diagnosed at stage 3, and I am currently cancer-free. I have a coming CT and see how things are developing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Evelyn. And next up, how about Raquel?
Hello, my name is Raquel Doak. I'm currently living in Houston, Texas. I was diagnosed at stage 4, and I am still stage 4 and undergoing treatment.
Thanks, Raquel. And next up is Nicole, who Nicole was not able to make it to the first patient panel we had, but she did want to come on to take us too. So we're happy to have you, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole Streffolino. I was diagnosed stage 1 in 2020 and currently still stage 1. And I live on Long Island, New York.
Thanks, Nicole. And last up, we have Tara.
Hi, I'm Tara Harville, and I live in Wyoming, and I was originally diagnosed at stage 4 in 2021. And I want to say that I'm currently NAD, but after recent scans, it doesn't look like it's that way anymore.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us, Tara. And obviously, we are all sending so much love your way and hoping that it's nothing. But,
I'm praying too, but we'll see what Dr. Del Rio says.
Yeah. All right, so what we're going to do is go ahead and jump into questions. We have quite a few today. And so if you'd like to answer a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. We're not going to ask everybody to answer every question. We'll probably have 3 people answer every question. So the first one is, how long did you go undiagnosed before you received the correct diagnosis? All right, Tara, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so I am a nurse, and I worked all of 2019 and 2020 feeling during COVID pandemic and everything, feeling like total crap and having like hot flashes and extreme weight gain and abdominal pain, lower back pain, and I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And my doctor just kept telling me, oh, it's COVID related. And then, so it was almost a year and a half before I was finally diagnosed in March of 21, after I had a hysterectomy that I didn't need to have because they thought all my symptoms were menopausal. And when that didn't solve the symptoms, they finally decided to do a CT scan. And that's when they found the tumor on my left kidney. And then my liver and my diaphragm were completely full of tumors.
Wow. Okay. Thanks, Tara. Would anybody else like to share? Nicole.
So until I was no one ever thought that the tumor I found it on accident. I had a kidney stone, and they found it during a CT for that. But any kind of symptoms that I was actually going to the doctor for, we all thought it was some just hormonal, like I had 4 kids, like I was still relatively, my twins weren't even 2 yet. And, weight gain, acne, I was breaking out terribly, mood swings, like insane. So I was just being treated basically for anxiety. And in taking medications to help with the weight loss is how I ended up with the kidney stone, because it's a side effect. So I didn't have any other real symptoms besides just pretty much for all of 2019. I was just being treated for, basically just being an anxious woman. And then even when they saw the tumor itself, they didn't think it was anything until the pathology came back and saw that it was ACC.
So what was that total timeline for you from when you were being treated for anxiety? Diagnosis?
Probably that started probably with the anxiety stuff, probably like 2018. Actually, no, it was before I even had the twins, so probably like the end of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of put a pause everything because I was pregnant for, that whole time. And then everybody just thought it was getting worse because I was, postpartum. But apparently not. So
Well, thank you. Next up, Evelyn.
Okay, so I had a previous story of um of kidney disease. So every time, I had surgery when I was around 20. I lost half of one of my kidneys. But after that surgery, I always felt good. My surgeon back then, he told me, like, for the rest of your life, you have to watch out for certain symptoms. So if I ever had like urinary tract infection, I would have to, take care of that like as soon as possible. And so I began having like infections, urinary tract infections. And, they gave me antibiotics. I was well for a couple of months and then again. So it was like my third time here having the infection. And I went back to the doctor and I was not feeling well. And she said, like, okay, we did all the tests on your sample. You don't seem to have an infection. So, and I told her, well, but I don't feel well. I feel I feel a lot of pain in my bladder. My back was hurting a lot. And I was feeling so bad, I couldn't like stand straight. So after that episode, I talked to my friend. I told him, look, I'm having all these symptoms. I'm not feeling well. And he said, like, okay, go do all your tests. So once you get the tests done, we can talk about that. Sit down and talk about that. In those days, my mom passed away. I went to Colombia for her funeral. While I was there, I was not feeling well. So I began calling, to set up appointments. And when I came back from her funeral, I didn't want to stay there any longer because I was my chest was hurting. She had a massive heart attack. So I thought, maybe I'm developing a heart problem. So they began to, do all the tests, running everything. Everything was coming out good until I also got COVID during that time. And then when I got COVID, I got like really, really swollen. My face got like really big. I exploded. I was like gaining weight like so fast. And then I told him again, I called him and I told him, like, my feet are swollen. I can barely walk. My face is like very big. I'm gaining a lot of weight. And my chest, I began to have like hair in my face. I don't know what's going on. He said, okay, this sounds like, from these symptoms that I'm going to send you, you tell me which symptoms do you have. It was a list of like 10 symptoms and I had them all. He said, you have something related to your cushion, to the cortisol. It looks like it's Cushing syndrome. There's Cushing syndrome, there's Cushing. We need to find out, you need to find that endocrinologist. And then, I found an endocrinologist and he began to run all the tests. It took like 18 months since the beginning that I was not feeling well until, they could figure out what it was. So
Wow.
that's how I got
Thank
it.
you, Evelyn. So about 18 months. All right. Did anybody else want to answer that question? Okay. So moving on to our next question says, I've heard from specialists that oftentimes the patient decides the next course of treatment. Has that been your experience? Tara?
Yes, I went through several months of EDP and several months of immunotherapy after my initial diagnosis. And then I was told that I had 4 months left to live, that there was nothing else they could do for me. They weren't going to do surgery here where I was locally at in Colorado at the time, because they didn't want to cut the liver basically, and they were scared to cut the kidney and stuff. So they weren't educated on ACC very well. They just knew like the basics. So I basically looked at my oncologist at that point and I said, that's an option. And I researched. Google was my best friend at the time and also my worst enemy. But I researched ACC specialists, and the three that popped up were Dr. Fojo, Dr. Del Riviero, and Dr. Hammer. And I emailed all three of them, and Dr. Del Riviero called me back in 20 minutes. And that was when I changed the direction of my course, and I refused to go on hospice care, and I went on a clinical trial at NIH.
Wow, Tara, thank you so much. All right, would anybody else like to answer that question about having involvement in your treatment, and is ultimately is it you having to make those decisions? Gracie?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the doctor you're dealing with, but overall, I definitely feel fortunate that I can say yes. I feel like I have been able to make decisions in my treatment and feel like it was coming from me. In the beginning, when I was first diagnosed, I too was given, a terminal diagnosis of 12 to 18 months, and it was basically EDP and surgery or nothing. And that same doctor who gave me the prognosis of 12 to 18 months when the EDP was ineffective, he also told me surgery couldn't happen. But fortunately, I pivoted and went to MD Anderson, and there I was presented with a lot of other options. Within reason, not a lot, but a few other options. And they pushed for surgery. They put me on trials. And it's definitely been presented to me as my choice. I remember my doctor initially asked me, do you want to do surgery first, or do you want to do this other treatment plan first? And, did put the ball in my court. That being said, I will say sometimes the way things are presented to you, I personally have felt a little influenced to make certain decisions. And them being the professionals that they are, you tend to fall under that influence. But other times I felt like there weren't options at all. So I'm just grateful to even have options at certain times. I will also say it's been tricky at times because, we are dealing with something so rare. I have taken things into my own hands at times. I've done a lot of my own personal research and found doctors that are a little bit off the beaten path, and taken tests that aren't necessarily widely recognized, and then presented that to my allopathic doctors. And my allopathic doctors have kind of just like poo-pooed that and thought that that was kind of nonsense, that I would pursue those types of things. So yeah, it overall just depends, but it's definitely been a muscle that I've had to build to trust in myself and the direction that I want to take, and the knowing that it's ultimately up to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Gracie. All right. Would anybody else like to answer that question?
Well,
Okay.
in my case, I think I have been very lucky and I'm blessed to have, my boyfriend is a doctor. So he has helped me through the whole process. He has educated me when I was, at the beginning diagnosed. He told me, look, we're gonna face whatever it is, and you have to, you have to do everything that is possible, And then he said, then when I talked to my surgeon, when I went to talk to the endocrinologist, I think he had experience with other adrenal cancer patients, and I think that he had a more clear, idea of what was going on with me, but they were breaking all the information to me like in little pieces because I was, going through a lot with my mom passing away. So the way that he presented to me, he, was telling me very, very kindly and in a very subtle way. He sent me to a surgeon who was oncologist surgeon. I didn't realize that until later. It was an oncologist surgery. It was not just whatever surgery. And when I went to his appointment, he said the only treatment that we can give you right now is we have to get that tumor out. That's the only treatment that we can do now. And I had the surgery, and after that, when he called me with the results, he said, "Well, now it was malignant. You don't have cancer anymore. Right now, you need to go for chemo because there's only one medicine that you can take for that, and it's to clean your whole system from any malignant cells in your body." So the way that he presented things were very straightforward too. So I thought, and I searched and I couldn't find anything else. So, I just, things worked well for me, and I was lucky for that.
All right, thank you, Evelyn. All right, next question. I thought this was a really great one. How has this diagnosis impacted your daily life, work, and relationships?
So the main impact I noticed was, just hearing just the fact that you have cancer in itself is like a punch to the gut. So then just thinking and not knowing much about the kind of cancer that you have, you'll run to Google. You're going to start reading all about it. And then everything that I've read in the beginning was just like, I'm going to be dead in 5 years. So I went into like a whole, well, might as well just start, doing what I want to do now because I'm going to be dead in a few years, and it put me into like a really bad like headspace altogether. I had 4 kids. 2 of them were at the time, they barely were 2. I felt very, I guess I kind of pulled myself away from everybody else because especially like the youngest kids, because I'm like, well, I'm going to be leaving them anyway. I'm never going to see any of them. I'm not going to see any of them graduate. I'm not going to, I just kept thinking of all the things that were not going to happen. And it really messes with your head. And then, I learned a little bit more and more, and I'm like, okay, it's all right. So I'm only stage 1. I'm like, that's good. That's a great thing. But then I read like, oh, well, it's oncocytic. I'm like, what does that mean? So then I'm like, is that worse? Is that it's so everything that you read just kind of just messes with you. And then just even physically being on mitotine, it took me out. Like I couldn't drive, and I live on Long Island where you cannot get anywhere without a car. Public transportation is not a really big thing out here. If it is, it's like 3-hour bus rides to go 10 miles, so I ended up transferring my position because I work in healthcare, but I ended up going into like the back office kind of stuff because I couldn't go in. I didn't want to be around patients. It was in the middle of COVID. And not being able to even just stay awake all day long. I felt like I got hit by a bus every day. And that messes with you too when you're such an active person beforehand. And then everything that like the life and everything you knew for the first 35 years of my life was just, to me, it felt like it was over at that point. And it's only been within the past couple of years, I think we're finally starting to understand that like I'm not dying of cancer, I'm living with it. So I'm just going to keep on living how I was before, 2020. And I may not be able to do everything as well or as easily as I could beforehand, but I'm not going to just say, oh, can't do it, I have cancer. Oh, can't do it, I have cancer. It takes a while, I feel like, to get to that spot because it's just such it's a mind trip for sure. And it takes a while to kind of get out of that funk that you're going to get into. And I think that's just inevitable, but, things have gone up and down in the past, like, 4 or 5 years, but it will, I think if you put out the positive, you're going to get the positive back. So I just had to teach myself that and keep thinking that way. And that's my plan for now.
I love that plan. Thank you, Nicole. Would anybody else like to answer that question about how it's affected you, Tara?
So I was a workaholic and I worked 13, 14, 15-hour days. I'm a nurse. And so like my world, my social and my work life and everything came to like a complete halt very fast. And I wasn't able, like she was saying with Mitotane, like once I started taking Mitotane, I was sleeping all the time. And then the chemo made me just even sicker. So I just pretty much for 8 months slept. And I remember times that I told my husband that I was just ready to give up. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired of being sick and I'm tired of not feeling good. And so the biggest thing was just my world just basically stopped, like I was just so busy and, being a mom of 3 kids, I was kind of in the same boat, like researching all this stuff on Google, like your worst enemy. And you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be dead, in a few years. So I'm making plans for my funeral. And these are things I didn't want to do at 41 years old, and I look at my little kid, my youngest, who was 10 at the time, and she's 14 now. And I'm like, I'm never going to see her graduate high school. I had one that was already a senior in high school and one that was a sophomore at the time. So I was like, well, maybe I'll get to see them, but I'm not going to see any of them going to get married. I'm not going to see my grandkids. You think through all these things that you wanted to do in your life as you go on, and you're like, you feel like you're just never going to see that. And I learned eventually to start just living day by day. And like Nicole said, we're not dying from cancer, we're living with it. And you have to make the best out of every day that we have. So, we can die in a car crash tomorrow, and that's just going to be the crappy part of the situation, but we're fighters. And so I've learned that with my diagnosis, I don't use my cancer as an excuse. I use it as a reason to fight and a reason to prove to people that you can fight with cancer and you can continue on with cancer no matter what your story is and what stage you are.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. All right. Anybody else want to answer that one? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. And we talked about this kind of at the live panel. We talked about, some suggestions we have other than a cure, like what would we like to see? But this is more about like what's going on currently. And is there anything you'd recommend to make the process easy or more comfortable for you?
I'll start out. I think there needs to be more education across the board for all physicians, all endocrinologists, everything. They need to know about ACC. It is a cancer that's out there, and when it's presented to them, they don't need to be giving ACC patients death sentences, basically. They need to give them options. Say, this is what we can do to start off with, or this is what we can do to go, after, if this doesn't work, we can do this. Because there are options for us. But they always just do like the EDP and the immunotherapy, and then they just say, oh, that's it. Or the immunotherapy and the EDP and the surgery, oh, that's it. They basically give you like just no options. Like you feel like you're just stuck in a place where you just don't have any options for treatment.
Yeah, definitely. All right, would anybody else like to answer that question? Gracie?
Yeah, taking a little bit different of an approach than I did during the live panel. I think just having grace on yourself, but taking care of your body as best as you possibly can. Just prioritizing the little things, like even if it's a 5-minute walk, talking to a friend on the phone for a few minutes, just making sure that you're healing yourself, not only on a physical level, but on an emotional level as well. Because I think that the emotional level, as was kind of touched on before, it's really, really tasking to be diagnosed with something like this. And then there's all of the physical side effects too. And it can be really draining for your mental health. and just creating a container for yourself that's as healing as possible. And that's not, just physical. That's like therapists, acupuncturists, groups, friendships, etc. So yeah, you're
Definitely.
still a person. You're still a person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was actually getting infusion this week and I was like, I wish this wasn't so clinical feeling because I get infusion every 3 weeks, like, and I hate going to the hospital to do it. I just wish, like, could we make it more spa-like? Can we just play a little like peaceful music and put some Himalayan salt lamps in the room with me, please? Like, that's what I would love.
That would be
Um,
amazing.
yeah, right? Like, I just feel like it should be like feeling hopeful and like healing, not so clinical. And I hate the smell of like the syringes when they're, cleaning my lines and everything, like all of that. I hate it. So yeah, I would love to see like a whole transformation for cancer centers in general.
Yeah,
Totally.
I think cancer centers, like you said, cancer centers should be more like spas, comfy chairs or, comfy little couches and just make them comfortable. Give them hope. Give everybody hope. Everybody that has cancer, no matter it's ACC or breast cancer or whatever. We all need hope in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm. Yeah. Evelyn?
Sorry, that's one of the things that I like of the place where I go because it is a cancer pavilion, but it doesn't look like a cancer place. I mean, I don't remember who I told somebody what I love that place is I get there and I don't see any patients.
Mm.
So I go in, there's nobody. The waiting room is empty. And then when I go in, I don't see anybody. Everybody's hiding. I don't know where they are because I can't see them. So that for me was something very helpful because I tried going to MSK and it was very scary for me because you see hundreds of people very um sick, and it's like that for me was just every time I left the building when I went there, um I would sit in my car and cry my eyes. So I decided to go there because I felt better. And it's probably that concept that you're saying. The place doesn't look like a hospital. It doesn't look like a clinic. It looks, it's a friendly place. And, and I think that helps a lot to make you feel that you are not done. There's more, there's more life. So I think that is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's nice to know places like that exist for sure.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Evelyn. Would anybody else like to answer that question? Raquel?
Yeah, so I think something or like some things that you can do to kind of make the experience as comfortable as it can be when somebody has cancer. I think I think Gracie kind of touched on this, but like taking care of your mental health. I find it very important to speak to a therapist, and not only a therapist, but I actually have a therapist through MD Anderson who like works with cancer patients. So I feel like it's helpful for me to kind of talk things out with her, and she kind of can put things into perspective for me. Um, I also see like a psychiatrist. I covered all my bases because for a very long time I was doing this alone, and I was like so depressed, and I like wouldn't want to get out of bed. I had to quit my job because of all the treatment that I had to go through. So I moved to Texas, and I didn't have a lot of friends there. So it was just really hard. And not to say that speaking to a therapist makes it all of a sudden better, but I think it equips you with the tools so that you can better handle the situation. Um, like, I'm not afraid to say now I'm on antidepressants and I take anti-anxiety medication. Like, I think it's
Me
important.
too.
I
Me too.
I think some people, feel nervous about doing something like that. I know I was always hesitant, before getting a diagnosis. Like I was like, oh, like I don't need anything. And when I got diagnosed, I was like, okay, yeah, like I'm depressed, but obviously I'm going to be depressed. I got diagnosed with cancer at the age of 27. But I will say, since speaking with a therapist and speaking with a psychiatrist and utilizing medications that have helped me, I think all of those put together, just have a better outlook on life, and I am taking advantage of the everyday. And then kind of what we were speaking to before, MD Anderson also has like you can get acupuncture, you can get oncology massages. They have the psychiatrist available, nutritionist, etc. So I think just utilizing all the resources that are available to you to make the experience like as comfortable as it can be.
Yeah, I agree completely. I ended up finding a therapist who is a survivor of cancer herself, but she was also a caretaker for her mom and sister who both had cancer too. And I love her because I feel like she gives me such good perspective from like all areas. Because, it's hard to be a caretaker too. And I think sometimes as patients, we forget that. But yes, definitely a big fan of supporting your mental health too. Great. Well, thank you,
One other quick
everyone.
thing
Oh,
I'll say about the whole mental health piece.
yep.
I'm big into trying to manage my mental health, although it can be a little hard sometimes. I already struggle with baseline panic disorder that's like on level 10. So when this happened for me, I was literally like, I thought I wasn't going to be able to, not even from the cancer. I thought I would like die from anxiety because I couldn't even function. And so that's just a big part. I agree with everything that you all are saying, as far as, something aside from our regular treatment is taking care of our mental health. And I was lucky to find also a therapist. I went through like 5 or 6 of them because for me, like I didn't want regular therapy. Like it just like don't tell me about the grieving process and all that good stuff. Like I really want you to like I wanted somebody to feel like or understand what I was feeling. I've been in therapy my whole life, but then, I found actually she's a breast cancer survivor and she's one of 4 she has 3 sisters and all but one, including her. So 3 out of the 4 had breast cancer. So she really understood. And I was just like, man, this is good. And I don't, and like you said, Raquel, like it's not going to fix it. It's no magic trick. But I found also my support system's like really small, but the people that I did have also like were just like, you'll be fine. Like think positive. And I'm like, well, I need to talk about like how I'm feeling, right? Without
Mhm.
being made to feel like
Mhm.
I'm being negative Nancy and like, I'm putting all this negative energy into the atmosphere because it's like, well, yeah, I do believe in the power of positive thinking, but it's also like it's a real deal for me. And I'm trying to process like this, potentially terminal cancer. And so there in therapy, you can just like really let it out and they're not gonna like, put you down for being, for just sharing how you really feel and like the potential fears of like what could happen. So my 2 cents, I'll be quiet, but mental health support.
No.
No, thanks for sharing, Hope. Um, Great. And let's see. This next question I think is a really important one because like I was saying earlier, I think being a caretaker is really hard too. And that's like, a whole different struggle that they have. So what advice would you give to a caretaker of someone with ACC to help them be the best support system on this journey? Go ahead and just raise your hand if you would like to speak. Actually, Tamika hopped on, so we're going to have her answer this one first. Tamika?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
I think the advice I would give somebody is to make sure that their cup is also filled. Because I think, at least in my experience with my dynamic with my caregiver, in the very beginning of the fight, there was lots of discussions about a loss of identity outside of being a caretaker. Just like I struggled with being anything other than a patient all the time, especially when I needed a lot of support, like on every front. So I think the best advice I would give somebody is to make sure that their cup is filled as well, and that they're still doing things that they love and enjoy, so that um, I think it helps lessen some of the burden between the patient and caregiver.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. Thank you, Tamika. Would anybody else like to answer that question? Gracie?
Yeah, Tamika, that was part of my answer, so thank you. That's amazing. But the other thing that I wanted to say is I think caregivers also need support systems. In my experience, I know my main caregiver similarly kind of lost her identity within the mix of becoming my caregiver, and she really needed other people to lean on, to vent to cry to be normal with, and so and to delegate tasks to. Even she was doing everything, and I think she kind of forgot that it's okay to lean on other people and not just be the person that is lent on. So yeah, just developing a safe and strong support system for yourself, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's friends or therapists or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, very good suggestion also. I saw some other hands go up earlier, but I can't remember now. Who else
It
would
was
like?
me.
Sarah? Okay, yes.
I agree with Gracie and Tamika. I had several caretakers, my husband being one and my mother being the other. And they both would take turns, like when one would get too tired of, dealing with like the emotional roller coaster, or like with the trips. Like my husband can only make so many trips with me down here for treatment. And then my mom would take over. So they worked together on that. But also my husband and my mother reached out to like their personal friends, and they took that time to have their moments away so that they didn't feel like they were just strictly caretakers, that they still had their individuality. And then my husband also sought therapy to help him get through his own emotions, because it was his wife going through, this cancer, and his biggest fear was losing me. So he did get a therapist to help him work through those emotions and stuff.
Great, thank you. And Evelyn, did you want to say something as well?
Yes, for me it's also, it was a little different because of the stage that I had. Mine was stage 3, so it wasn't probably for them. And then probably in my case, my caregivers are my kids, teenagers taking care of their mom by themselves. I wish there was like a manual for them. But at the end, it all comes from their heart, the kindness of their heart and their love. I lost my mom before I was diagnosed. My dad wasn't here. He would come for the surgeries and then leave. And then, well, you all know I relocated here to the States just a couple of years before I got diagnosed. So I really don't have like that big support system. My doctors help me a lot. My oncologist, every time I call her, every time I send her a message, every time I express need to talk to a specialist, or she would provide it to me. And she from the beginning gave me the order for antidepressant, which I didn't take until like 6 months later, when I was like really, really, really very depressed. And that helped me a lot. But I think it was very difficult for my kids, because they were in high school. So there's no manual. We need a manual for them so they can handle us.
Yeah, and I think the common theme here is just caregivers need a lot of support too. And in my experience, I feel like I can't offer the support to a caretaker. Like I'm going through something completely different, like, but I think it's so important for caretakers to talk with other caretakers as well.
I
Great.
did something for my caretakers. I took them to Cancun and then, to try and leave all that
That
energy.
was fun.
So we
I
went
want
to
to be your
Cancun.
caretaker, Evelyn.
Yes, I can come here and I'll take care of it. And then we went and we had so much fun. I was so excited. I was like, it was funny because I couldn't like walk too much. And I was like always like walking like this, but I did it. And we went and we had fun.
I think that's a really good idea and important point to like involve caregivers in celebrations just as much as they're there for the really trying moments, um, so that they experience like the highs with us as well and not just the overnight hospital visits.
They would have kicked me out because, being a mom and just, I know it was not easy. They needed something
Yeah.
to cheer up.
Yeah, it's not easy. And one other thing that I wanted to mention too, kind of like taking a little bit of a different approach is I think not necessarily primary caregivers, but like a lot of my friends and, family members, when I was diagnosed, you would say like, let me know if I can do anything. Well, like we're already making such big decisions, like literally life-changing decisions. I couldn't think of anything, so I think it's really helpful instead of saying, let me know if you need anything, when people make a suggestion and say like, hey, to the grocery store. Like, is there anything I can pick up for you and drop off? Or, I'm going to be at your favorite restaurant, even if they're not. I'm going to be at your favorite restaurant. Like, I'm going to get your favorite meal. Remind me what it is, and I'll just drop it off today. Like, things like that really made me feel so loved. And like, it was like one less thing I had to worry about, like telling somebody how to help me. So I always think it's nice when people start making suggestions of things they can do for you, or even like I'll pick you up and go to your appointments with you, or I'll meet you there and sit with you in your infusion. Like anything is helpful. So
One thing my
recently
sister
told
did
me-
was
Oh.
she would take me to like the zoo or to like the animal sanctuary just to get my mind and her mind off of everything that was going on. So she tried to think of things that we could do that wasn't cancer related,
yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, for sure.
Someone recently told me something and I was like, dang, I wish I knew that like when I was first diagnosed, but I'll definitely keep this in my pocket. But and I don't, it might have been one of you, I don't remember, but someone said like when someone says, oh, let me know how I can help you, or if you need anything, let me know, to ask them, well, what do you mean by that? Like, what kinds of things are you available for? And I was like, dang, I should have, like, was it you, Melinda, that told me that?
I don't think it was, but I'm not so it's a great suggestion.
It sounds very Melinda-ish.
Yes, but
I was like, wow, that's really
suggestions.
good because then you know like what they're willing or able to do, right? Because everyone's always going to say, I'm here if you need me. But to
Right.
be able to, like come back and say, oh, thank you. Like, what do you mean? Like, what kinds of things are you able to do? Or like, what days are you available? I should have done that because I was very alone. And so I wish I would have had that tool in my tool bag.
I would have wished to have that too, because there was times that I'm like, I can't even get up and help do my dishes. And I would have loved for somebody just to come over and do my dishes, you
Oh, yeah.
know?
For sure.
Yeah, great. All very good suggestions. Does anybody have any other suggestions for caretakers? Raquel.
This is just like maybe pretty straightforward, but I also think it's important for caretakers to know that like they don't have to have all the answers. I think toxic positivity is a very real thing, and I think it's important for caregivers obviously to like encourage you and make sure that you have a sense of hope, but completely like ignoring an issue, like, okay, if I have disease progression, then you say, oh, like, it's okay, everything's gonna be okay. Like, I don't need to hear that. Like, I'm freaking out, like, I want to cry, and I want somebody to be there while I cry and say, like, yes, this sucks. But I'm gonna be there for you when we like go through this. So I think it's just important for caregivers to not feel like they, have to have all the answers and have to say the right thing all the time. Just them being there is enough. And like feeling your emotions with you is really important.
Yeah, definitely. Very good suggestion. Thank you, Raquel. All right, we are on to our last question tonight. So, what motivates you to keep a positive spirit towards life? I know Tamika wanted to answer this one. So, Tamika, do you want to start us off with this?
I think she dropped off. Shoot.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's okay. Would
Sorry.
anybody else like to answer that? What keeps you
I don't
motivated?
know.
Nicole, go ahead.
I mean, obviously my kids. I want them to like not just say like, oh yeah, my mom has cancer, but like know that their mom's like busting her ass to make sure that like I will be there for everything, for them growing up, and I'll do whatever it takes, for that to happen. Because I mean, look, he doesn't leave my side, so right, Tom? Yeah. So especially this one. He's the sensitive one.
All right. Aw. All right, Tara, would you like to share?
Yeah. One thing that keeps me going is my children, for one, my husband. My husband and I have been together since we're high school sweethearts. So we got married at 19. And we've been together ever since. And my fur babies and God, really. My faith has really kept me positive and everything. I've just kind of kept everything and left it with God, and basically just knows that if I go, I'm gonna go meet him. But if not, then I'm blessed to be here to celebrate milestones with my family and milestones with my children and that kind of thing. It's just my youngest was 10 years old when I was diagnosed, and she was more mature about the fact that I was going to possibly die than my older two children were. And she looked at me and told me, Mom, I pray to God every night that if you do die, that you get to be my guardian angel. So very responsible, so it brought me back to faith because I was very angry for a while with God after I was diagnosed. And I left my faith, but my church never left me. So it's just everything I've gone through has just brought me back full circle. So
Nice. Thank you for sharing all that, Tara. Tamika, did you want to answer now? Okay, go ahead.
Faith, I think, is also the thing that keeps me going as well. I also think it's really normal to be angry with God, especially after cancer diagnosis and everything we've been through. But I have been a devout Christian my entire life. So after my cancer diagnosis, it never really shook my faith. In fact, it affirmed it, and made me a lot more intentional about my relationship with God. It wasn't just something that, I prayed at the dinner table and made it to church on Sunday. Um, like now I talk to God like I talk to a friend. So I think that has given me the most amount of strength. And my family, being able to be there and still fulfill my roles as oldest daughter and older sister and all of those things that I kind of took for granted before I got sick. Like I've always been really proud of those roles, but um, I mean, cancer really puts into perspective what's important to you. So I think my family and my God have never felt more important to me than now, and that's what really keeps me going.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to share what keeps you motivated? Evelyn.
Keeps me motivated, my, of course, God, first of all. I am like a cat. I have like 7 lives like a cat. I've been like, I had, this treatment was difficult. The complication of the last surgery was really important, but he has me here. So there is something special that I need to do. So I keep that in mind every day, and I'm trying to be a better person if I can, you know. And my children, my 2 kids, they are they are, the light of my life, and I want to see them get married and have children when the time comes, and I want to be there for them. So that's what keeps me going.
Thank you, Evelyn. And Gracie, I saw your hand go up as well.
Yeah, I just want to reaffirm quickly that I'm not positive every day. Some days I'm really angry and bitter and woe is me. And I just want every ACC patient to know that you are not alone in that, and that is part of this process, and that is okay. But I think the thing that keeps me going day to day is the same thing that really terrifies me. We've all had to face our mortality in a way that most people have not. And that's equally terrifying to recognize how fleeting and fragile life is, but also really beautiful, because the silver lining that I've found is that I have found a purpose that I probably would have taken years or maybe a lifetime to have found before. I've pursued things and done things that have been on my bucket list, if you will, for a very long time, and I've done them in a matter of months because I don't know how much time I have left. And it's made life really beautiful despite this really dark and scary thing that we're going through. So yeah.
I love that. I resonate a lot with that too, Gracie. Thank you. Would anybody else like to share what keeps them motivated? All right. All right, well, we're going to be done with the Q&A portion, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.